I found out my husband wears pantyhose on a Tuesday afternoon while looking for a phone charger. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've had months to sit with the sentence, and it still feels like the opening line of someone else's story, not mine. It was one of those ordinary beige days. Work, errands, the quiet hum of a life we'd built over 10 years of marriage. I came home, kicked off my flats by the door like always, and headed straight for the bedroom, already rehearsing the tiny argument I was going to start about how he keeps stealing my charger and forgetting to put it back. Our room was exactly as we'd left it that morning. Bed unmade, his tie draped over the back of the chair, the faint citrus scent of his aftershave still lingering in the air. I tossed my bag on the bed, knelt by his side of the nightstand, and pulled open the top drawer. Pens, receipts, chapstick, a random screwdriver that had no right to be there, no charger. I huffed, already composing a dramatic text in my head about this being the final straw, when I noticed the drawer resisted when I tried to slide it shut. Something at the back was catching. I frowned and pulled it all the way open. There was a second layer under the receipts, like a secret shelf created by years of crumpled paper and random junk. I saw just a hint of something white and silky peeking out from under a bank statement. I thought, probably an old handkerchief, a stray sock. I pushed the receipts aside and found a neatly folded pair of nude pantyhose. I stared at them, my brain desperately trying to categorize what my eyes were seeing. They were very clearly not mine. Wrong brand, wrong size, wrong shade. For a second, all the air left my lungs. Pantyhose. My first thought wasn't cross-dressing, it was cheating. Is someone else leaving their clothes in my house? I held them up with both hands, the nylon whispering between my fingers. They were heavier than mine, stronger, like they were made to stretch across someone bigger. I looked from the pantyhose to the rest of the drawer, and my heart started that ugly, fluttering panic dance. Underneath, there was more. A lace bra, black, delicate, cups a little wider and more structured than anything I owned. A tube of lipstick, red, not the blue red I liked, but a deeper brick shade. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I might be sick. I sat back hard on my heels, pantyhose still dangling from my hand, the bra and lipstick on display in the open drawer like evidence at a crime scene. My mind went straight to the worst places. How long had he been seeing her? Who was she? Had she been in our bed? Had she stood in front of our mirror in my space, putting on this lipstick while he watched? I could taste metal in my mouth. My hands shook. And then, because the human brain is weird, another thought slipped in, quieter but insistent. If he was cheating, why hide her things in his nightstand, where he knew I could find them? Why not keep them somewhere actually secret? His office, his car, literally anywhere else? I stared at the items again, this time trying to imagine them in use. The pantyhose stretched over long legs, the bra straps adjusted and tugged, the lipstick rolled up, carefully applied in the mirror on his side of the bed. The image shifted in my head. The hands putting on the lipstick turned slightly larger, hairier, familiar. My heart gave a strange little lurch. No, that's not, except it was suddenly the only thing that made sense. No stray perfume, no odd receipts, no late nights he couldn't explain. Just my husband, who always seemed a little too fascinated by the way my tights looked on my legs, who'd made offhand comments about dresses looking so comfortable, who lingered in the women's section when we went shopping just to see the colors. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. "Oh," I whispered to the empty room. "Oh." The panic didn't disappear exactly. It just changed shape, less sharp, more heavy. I set the pantyhose down on the bed like they might shatter, then picked them back up because the idea of leaving them out felt like too much. Carefully, I refolded everything the way I'd found it and tucked it back under the receipts. My hands knew what they were doing. My brain was still catching up. For a long minute, I just sat there on the floor, back pressed against the nightstand, fingers pressed to my temples. The house seemed too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I thought about calling my best friend, my sister, saying, "You're not going to believe this." But the words felt brittle and unfair in my mouth. I didn't even know the shape of the story yet. I only had this secret, heavy and delicate in my hands, and the knowledge that the man I'd slept beside for a decade had a part of himself tucked away in a drawer he'd never shown me. Eventually, I stood up, pushed the drawer shut, smoothed the bedspread with palms that still trembled. The charger, ironically, was in my bag the whole time. The rest of the afternoon passed in a weird fog. I answered a couple of work emails, half-watched an episode of something on Netflix without absorbing a single frame. Every time I walked past the bedroom doorway, I felt the drawer like a magnet, pulling at the corner of my vision. I kept replaying little moments in my head, looking for clues in retrospect. Like the time he'd jokingly held one of my dresses up to himself and asked, "You don't think I'd look good in this?" with a smile that had just a little edge of something raw behind it. Or the way he'd once complimented a woman's outfit. "It must feel amazing to wear something that swishy." And then gone quiet when I teased him about wanting to try it himself. Had he been trying to tell me in all these sideways, half-safe ways? Or had he expected to take this secret to his grave, leaving me to find out by accident? By the time his key turned in the front door that evening, my nerves felt like exposed wires. "Hey, babe," he called, toeing off his shoes. "You home?" "In here," I said from the kitchen, where I was stirring a pot of pasta I'd already overcooked. He walked in, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking like the same man I'd kissed goodbye that morning. Brown hair a little mussed from the wind, faint smile lines around his hazel eyes. His face lit up when he saw me, like it always did. "Smells good," he said, coming over to kiss my cheek. I stiffened before I could stop myself. He paused, just slightly. His hand, warm on my waist, hesitated. "You okay?" he asked. I swallowed, forcing my shoulders to relax. "Yeah, just tired." I tried to act normal through dinner. We talked about his day, my day, the new hire at his office who didn't know how to work the coffee machine. The whole time, the drawer hummed like white noise at the back of my mind. He must have sensed something because he kept glancing at me, forehead creasing. "You sure you're all right?" he asked, after I'd stabbed at my pasta one too many times without actually eating it. I could have lied. I think he expected me to. But there was a new weight between us now, and I could feel myself suffocating under it. "I found something," I said, setting my fork down. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. "In your nightstand." His reaction was immediate. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. He slid his plate away like his appetite had vanished, hands curling into fists on the table. What did you find?" he asked very carefully. I could hear his heartbeat in the tiny pause before the question. Or maybe it was mine. "Pantyhose," I said. "A bra, lipstick." There it was, laid bare between us, like the contents of the drawer had spilled onto the table. He closed his eyes. For a second I thought he might actually faint. When he opened them, they were shiny, his jaw clenched tight. "I can explain," he said hoarsely. I held up a hand. "Before you do," I said, forcing the words to stay calm, "I need to know. Are they yours?" Silence. The fridge hummed. A car passed outside. His throat worked as he swallowed. "Yes," he said finally. A single syllable, small and heavy. "They're mine." The knot in my stomach loosened by an inch. No affair. No other woman. Just my husband. My husband. And a part of him I didn't know. "Okay," I thought, gripping the edge of the table. "Okay." For you to… Where? I asked, because even now my brain felt the need to be precise. He flinched and nodded, cheeks flushing deep red. Yes, he said again, for me to wear. We sat there in the quiet 4-beat aftermath of that confession, like a bomb had gone off in slow motion. I'd imagined this moment all afternoon. In some versions, I yelled. In others, I cried. In one particularly dramatic fantasy, I tossed the pantyhose at him like an accusation and told him to get out. Instead, watching his hands shake on the table, I just felt tired and strangely protective. How long? I asked softly. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside him for years. Since I was a kid, he said. Before you. Before anything. I used to sneak my mom's tights out of the laundry basket. It felt right. I don't know how else to put it. He gave a choked little laugh. I told myself I'd stop when I got older. When I started dating. When I got married. I didn't. He looked at me then. Really looked, as if bracing for impact. I'm sorry I hid it from you, he said. I was terrified you'd see me differently, or think I don't know, a freak, or that it meant I didn't want you, or that I wanted to be you. It's not, he broke off, pulling in another shaky breath. It's not about replacing you. It's not about not loving you. It's just a part of me. There it was again, that inexplicable instinct to shield him, the same one that kicked in when I watched him wince at a paper cut or saw his shoulders slump after a bad day at work. Except this time, the thing he needed protection from was me. I pressed my fingers into my palms under the table, forcing myself to be honest. I felt scared, I said, at first, and hurt, because I thought maybe it meant you were cheating, or that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. And then when I realized it was you, I felt, I don't know, like I was looking at a puzzle I didn't know how to solve. He nodded, eyes fixed on the salt shaker. That's fair. But, I added because it was true and it surprised me, I didn't feel disgusted. He looked up sharply, like he'd misheard me. You didn't? No, I said. Confused, yes. A little betrayed, yes, but not grossed out. I've actually read stories about this, online, forums, people talking about crossdressing or gender expression or whatever you want to call it. So part of me is like, okay, that's a thing some people do. I just didn't know I'd married one of them. His shoulders sagged, some of the iron tension leaking out of him. I thought you'd throw it all out, he admitted. The stuff, me, everything. I looked at him, really looked, at this man who snores slightly on his back, who cries at stupid movie trailers, who still brings me coffee in bed on Sundays just because. The idea of throwing him out of my life felt obscene. I'm not saying I'm fine, I said slowly. I'm not saying I understand it all, or that this doesn't change anything. It does. But I don't want to make you choose between me and you. Does that make sense? He blinked rapidly, and I realized with a jolt that his eyes had filled with tears. Why are you being so kind? He whispered. You're allowed to be angry. I huffed out a laugh that was closer to a sob. Oh, believe me, I am a little angry. We'll circle back to that. But right now, all I can think is that you've been carrying this alone for, what, decades? And that breaks my heart more than the fact that there's lipstick in your nightstand. He let out a strangled sound and covered his face with his hands for a second. When he dropped them, his cheeks were wet. I didn't think I deserved to tell you, he said, like you'd think you'd married a stranger. Maybe I have, a little, I said gently, but strangers can become familiar. I did it once with you already, remember? He smiled weakly. We sat there in the afterglow of confession, the air thick but not quite suffocating. There were 1,000 questions buzzing in my head. Do you want a different name when you're dressed? Are you thinking about transitioning? Are you attracted to men? But they all felt too big for this first fragile moment. So instead, I asked the smallest, truest one. Can I see? I said. He frowned. See what? You, I said, feeling my cheeks heat. In them, the pantyhose, the bra, the lipstick. I don't even know what you look like when you're like that. And if this is part of you and I love you, I'd kinda like to know who I'm loving. He stared at me like I'd just offered him the moon. Are you sure? He breathed. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, I said. I want to, I think. I'm scared, I admitted, the word tasting strange. But I'm more scared of pushing this back into the drawer and pretending it isn't there. He exhaled a laugh that cracked in the middle. That's more than I ever hoped you'd say. We did the dishes together in a daze, hands bumping occasionally in the soapy water. Normal married couple things, overlaid with the knowledge that we were about to walk into uncharted territory together. In the bedroom, he hovered by his side of the bed, suddenly awkward. I sat on mine, heart pounding. How do you want to do this? He asked. I usually do it when I'm alone. It's not glamorous. Go however you usually go, I said, then grimaced. That sounded better in my head. Just do what you'd do if I weren't here. I'll be right here. I promise I won't laugh or run. He nodded, throat bobbing, and opened the nightstand drawer. Watching him pull the pantyhose out this time felt different, less like stumbling upon contraband, more like witnessing a ritual. His hands were reverent, almost. He hesitated, then glanced at me. Can you look away while I change? He asked, voice small. For a second I was offended. We'd seen each other naked more times than I could count, but then I realized this wasn't about modesty. This was about vulnerability, about him wanting to control the reveal. Of course, I said and turned my back facing the doorway. Behind me, I heard the soft rustle of fabric, the tiny snap of a bra strap, the quiet curse when the pantyhose twisted weirdly. It was oddly intimate, hearing him navigate clothing that had always been my domain. I stared at the hallway wall and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. I could see him and feel repulsed. He could see my reaction and decide never to show me anything real again. We could tumble into a fight about gender and expectations and who we thought we were signing up to be for each other. Or I could see him and feel something new, strange, yes, but maybe also tender. Okay, he said eventually, voice breathless. I'm ready. You can look. I turned around slowly. He stood by the side of the bed, hands clasped nervously in front of him. The nude pantyhose hugged his legs, smoothing over the dark hair, catching the light in a way that made them look almost glossy. The black lace bra sat slightly crooked on his chest, the cups not quite filled the way they would be on a body like mine, but he'd adjusted the straps to fit as best he could. His shirt was off, his soft stomach exposed above the waistband of the tights. On his lips was that deep brick red lipstick, a little uneven around the edges, like he'd applied it without a mirror by habit. His brown hair was still in its usual style, but somehow, with the lipstick and the bra and the tights, his face looked different. Not unrecognizable, just expanded, like I was seeing another facet of the same person. He looked terrified. If you hate it, just say so, he said quickly. We can forget this ever happened. Shh, I said, and stood up. I walked around the bed slowly, taking him in piece by piece. The way the pantyhose smoothed his knees, the faint indent of the bra strap on his shoulder, the lipstick slightly smudged at one corner where he'd bitten his lip. You do this often? I asked quietly. He nodded. When you're out, or asleep. It helps. I don't know why. It just makes me feel calm or more real. That sounds stupid. It doesn't, I said. It sounds honest. I reached out and touched the sleeve of the bra, fingers brushing the lace. The fabric was scratchy under my fingertips, familiar and strange all at once. "May I?" I asked, gesturing toward his face. He swallowed and nodded. I reached up and dragged my thumb gently along the edge of his mouth, smoothing out the smudge. Up close like this, I could see how his eyes were glassy, his pupils wide. He smelled like his usual aftershave, a hint of sweat and something floral from the fabric. "You're shaking," I murmured. "I've never done this in front of anyone," he admitted. "You're the first person who's seen me like this and stayed." Something inside my chest cracked open. "You're still you," I said, hand cupping his cheek now, my thumb resting just at the edge of the lipstick. "My you, just with different packaging." He huffed out a watery laugh. Not exactly the glamorous reveal I imagined. "I don't know," I said. "You look kind of beautiful and a little ridiculous, but then so do I most of the time. It seems fair." He let out a breath like he'd been underwater and had finally surfaced. "Are you okay?" he asked, searching my face, as if he didn't entirely trust what he was seeing. "No," I said honestly. "Not completely. This is a lot. I'm going to need time, and I want us to talk more, maybe with a therapist, to figure out what this means. For you, for me, for us. I might freak out later and cry and say things I don't mean. I need you to know that's about me catching up, not you being wrong." He nodded quickly, eyes wide. "I can do that. I can be patient. I've hidden this for 30 years. I can give you time. But," I added, "right now, in this moment, I'm glad you trusted me enough to show me." He blinked rapidly, tears finally spilling over, tracking down his cheeks through the dusting of powder he'd applied without me noticing. "I love you," he said, voice breaking. "I know," I replied, stepping forward and pulling him into a hug. The lace pressed into my cheek. The pantyhose were smooth under my hands where they rested on the small of his back. He clung to me like he thought I might vanish. In that strange, layered embrace, bra against t-shirt, lipstick against skin, his heartbeat racing against mine, I realized something important. I didn't know yet what the future looked like for us. Maybe there'd be new labels, new clothes, new versions of date night. Maybe there'd be hard conversations about what it meant for his identity and where my comfort began and ended. But I wasn't mourning the man I thought I'd married. I was meeting him again in a new outfit, in a new light. And as unsettling as that was, there was also a quiet, stubborn little bud of curiosity opening up inside me. "Can you tell me what you call yourself?" I murmured into his shoulder. "When you're like this, do you have another name?" He stiffened slightly, then relaxed. "Sometimes I think of myself as Anna," he said. "In my head. I never said it out loud before." "Hi, Anna," I said softly, surprised at the lump in my throat. "I'm your wife. It's very nice to finally meet you." He laughed into my hair, a shaky, disbelieving sound, and held me tighter. Later, we'd sit on the bed and make lists of questions. We'd talk about boundaries, what I was and wasn't ready for, how often he wanted to dress, where, and when. We'd Google therapists and support groups and words like gender expression and cross-dressing and non-binary, and stumble our way through an entirely new vocabulary. But that first night, all we did was lie side by side on the bed, me in my old college t-shirt, him in his pantyhose and bra and smeared lipstick, holding hands in the dark. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the same way it had 100 times before, and I thought, strangely, that this was the most married I'd ever felt. Not because everything was perfect, but because we were choosing, in real time, to stay and see each other more clearly than we had the day before. If you're listening to this and thinking, I could never handle that, I get it. I really do. I don't know what I would have said if you'd asked me a year ago how I'd react to finding pantyhose in my husband's drawer. But here's what I know now, sitting on the other side of it. Sometimes, the thing you find hidden under old receipts in a drawer isn't the end of your relationship. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a much more honest one.